So why 412 BC? It's over 2000, it's around 2,500 years in the past. Historical fiction doesn't usually tend to go back that far. You'll often find most historical fiction tends to cluster itself around World War One, World War Two, maybe the 19th century. And then if it goes further back than that, that's actually quite distant historical fiction. Um, so yeah, ancient Greece is unusual. Part of it is just I love the classics, and I read Thucydides' History of the Peloponnesian War as a teenager, as all teenagers do, Um, and I almost became a bit obsessed with it and would reread it. And it's a chronicle of the 27-year war between Athens and Sparta that spreads all across the Greek world. But in another sense, parallel way that you could interpret the work or read it is as a Greek tragedy about the fall of Athens, about Athens' kind of hubris, its arrogance. So it presents itself, it's the home of democracy, it's the home of tragedy, comedic drama, all of these wonderful things. But it also starts to become this imperialistic monstrosity, just invading willy-nilly and presenting it constantly as this humanitarian intervention. Wonderful, interesting, kind of complex drama in that book. And at the heart of it is the Sicilian expedition, where Athens essentially says, "Oh, there's something really bad happening over in Sicily that we're going to arbitrate and we're going to intervene because we're so good." Really, behind the scenes, there was this awareness that they wanted to control Sicily and use the resources. It was a very rich territory in like natural resources. They would use what they got in Sicily, make it a kind of larger part of the Athenian Empire to go back and win the war in Sparta. Things don't go according to plan. Thousands of Athenian prisoners, a substantial portion of the male population, especially the young men of Athens, end up either dead or in this open air concentration camp in a quarry just outside of the city of Syracuse that you can visit today. Really dark, unusual, strange story. And to add to the bizarreness of it, but also for me, what made it very compelling was this passage from Plutarch that tells us that some of these prisoners survive by giving recitations from Euripides' plays. So again, that line for me between empathy and cruelty. And I couldn't believe when I read that. I was fascinated by it, but I also just couldn't believe that no one had written about it. I was like, no one has written a novel about this. And when I kind of ascertained that no one had, I was like, okay, I have to do that. So Lampo is the narrator of the novel. He's just turned 30. He's unemployed. He lives at home with his mother. The factory that he works at, he's a potter, as is Gelon, has been closed. So he's got too much time on his hands. And Lampo is a bit of an extrovert. He's a bit of a chancer. He brags. He's more than willing to tell a falsehood if it makes him seem more impressive. And then we have Gelon, his best friend, who's more of a serious, earnest, artistic fellow. He's also a potter, but he's a deep love of Athenian drama and Athenian poetry. He's experienced personal tragedy with the death of his son, and his wife has left as a result of this. So he's a man dealing with some, terrible. He's experienced terrible suffering in his own life, and he finds solace almost in Athenian drama and Athenian plays, and he gets it into his head. There's been this war with Athens. There's been no Athenian plays performed since the war has begun. And Athens might be destroyed. If that happens, all of the Athenian drama might be lost. So he ends up going into this quarry with these Athenian prisoners of war, looking for lines from Euripides' plays, because the way that those plays were performed back then, there's a very good likelihood that some of those prisoners would have acted in productions in Athens, either in the chorus or in the main role, certainly in the chorus. Um, and yeah, so it's an act of entertainment, but it's also potentially an act of preservation. Um, the Athenians, the Athenians might be saved in order to save their art. So there is Paches, who is an Athenian who Lampo saves. Lampo saves his life because not every Syracusan is as much of an admirer of Athenian drama as Lampo and Gelon. So in the very first chapter, Paches is on the point of being murdered by grief-stricken and furious Syracusan, and Lampo saves his life. And then also on the basis that not just as purely as an act of kindness and generosity, although part of it is that, but also the idea that Paches knows lines from Euripides' Medea and could potentially perform the role of Jason in a burgeoning production. There is Numa, who is an actual, as I said, there would have been real actors probably in that quarry. And one of those actors is Numa, who's a genuine, he's not just a soldier, he's a professional actor back in Athens. And he becomes almost the centerpiece of what is the theatrical escapade. Um, and there are, different actors in there. There's Lena, who's also a very gifted dramatist, and various other figures in and around Syracuse. Is you want to put on a play, it's not just, let's say, the words, it's the costumes, it's the food to feed the prisoners, it's the backdrops, because we want it to all look real. They don't want to, Lampo and Gellon are, they don't have much money, but they've got a lot of ambition and they want to do it right. I read all of the plays. I read them sometime. I knew them very well, but also at the back of my mind, what, and I had them as reference points while I was writing. But I was also this was a deeply oral tradition, so things were written down, but they were mostly memorized, as you say. But our actors in this quarry are starving, and they have been there for a long time, and also they have been told, "Tell us lines of Euripides in exchange for food." So built into my understanding is that some of them certainly do remember lines of Euripides, and some of them are improvising. So if you compare Euripides' plays to the versions of those plays that appear in my novel, there'll be certainly some discrepancies. They let these enslaved prisoners perform so the crowd can enjoy it, but I mean, that is one of the tensions or questions throughout the novel. Is there are some Syracusans who love Athenian drama, even if they don't love that the Athenian tried to invade their city. And there are some Syracusans who want nothing to do with the Athenians. They just want to leave them there to die. And so there's this tension that opens up in the community and in the performance of these plays, um, where there's that question, can we separate a people from, there's often, can you separate the artist from the art? Can you separate the people from the art, or the art from the context in which it was created? So yeah, all of that is at play in the book, definitely.